to the Dog Boys Sports and Stocks podcast. And this week is the NCAA Final Four in San Antonio. And there's two games on Saturday, and then the finals are on Monday. I'm going to talk a little bit about the two games on Saturday and try to figure out who we think is going to meet for the championship game on Monday. So just to start off, I want to talk a little bit about Houston and what I started with last week, which was Houston was at a disadvantage having to play in Indianapolis against Purdue in the Sweet 16. Well, they played a team in Purdue that was coming 65 miles or so from their campus, and they wound up beating Purdue. Well, being at a disadvantage last week, they're at an advantage this week because in the Final Four, now the Final Four being in San Antonio is only 3 hours from Houston. So they're going to have a lot of fans at this game. So what worked against them last week is going to work in their favor this week. So they'll have plenty of support in San Antonio this week. So we're going to break down the games. The first game is on Saturday at 6 p.m. on CBS, and it's Florida versus Auburn. Now, the interesting thing about this matchup is the coaching matchup is Todd Golden, Florida's coach, worked under Bruce Pearl. Bruce Pearl is the Auburn coach. So these guys know a little bit about each other, and they probably understand a little bit about what each other is going to want to do in this game. Now, these teams did meet earlier this year. They met back on February 8th, and Florida beat Auburn 90-81. So that game was in Auburn. Florida actually had a substantial lead in the first half, so the game really wasn't even that close. One of the other things that we have to look out for in this game is how healthy is Johnny Broome, Auburn's star. Now, he got hurt in the second half of the game on Sunday against Michigan State. He hyperextended his right elbow and also twisted his ankle. Now, he did come back into the game. I want to note he did hyperextend his right elbow. And when he came back in the game, he actually got to the free throw line and shot free throws. And I noticed, the announcers didn't notice it and didn't say anything, but I noticed that he shot his free throws. He's left-handed. So as bad of an injury as it might have been to his right elbow, he does shoot left-handed. So a big deal, but maybe not so big. As far as the breakdown of the game is concerned, the two leading scorers for each team, Walter Clayton Jr. leads Florida at 18.1 points a game, and Johnny Broome leads Auburn at 18.7 points a game. Now, as far as scoring per team, Florida is third in the nation, scoring at 85.4 points a game, and Auburn is 12th at 83.2 points a game. Defensively, they're both in the middle of the pack in the country. Florida's 98th points per game against, and Auburn is 86th. A couple areas where some of these teams may have an advantage. Rebounding, Florida is 8th in the country in rebounding at 44.8 per game. Auburn is 70th at 40.7 per game. Blocks, Auburn has the advantage. They're actually second in the country with 6 per game. And Florida is 37th in blocks, 4.5 a game. Turnovers, Auburn is really, really good possessing the ball. Do not turn the ball over a lot. They're 7th in the nation with only 9.3 turnovers per game, where the Gators are 93rd, turning the ball over 10.9 times a game. Now, as far as the matchup itself between the teams, I look at a lot of different things when I look at the game. And one of the things in basketball you have to look at is obviously is the size factor, the height. And in these two games on Saturday, I think that the height in these teams are going to make a big difference. So just to explain what I mean in this game with Florida, Florida has a size advantage in their front court. They've got Alex Condon is 6'11", Thomas Houck is 6'9", Ruben Chinalou 6'10", and Micah Hand-Gloten is 7'1". Now, on the other hand, Auburn in their front court, in their rotation, they've got Johnny Broome at 6'10", Dylan Cardwell is 6'11", and Chaney Johnson is 6'7". Those are the main guys up front for them in their rotation. The Gators are going to have a lot of height, and they're going to have a lot of fouls to give because they've got some depth in the front court, especially guarding Broome. So Broome is up for a Player of the Year, and he's a really good scorer. So they're going to be able to throw a lot of guys at him and throw him off a little bit, I think. Now, on the other hand, Florida's guards at 6'3" for Clayton, 6'2" for Martin, 6'4" for Richard. They're a little bit on the smaller side compared to Auburn's guards. Auburn guards, Miles Kelly, 6'6", Chad Baker-Mazara, 6'7", Denver Jones, 6'4". So they've got a little bit of size in their backcourt. So it kind of evens out a little bit. But when they played the first time, Florida had 13 made threes in that game. So the question is going to be, can Denver Jones and some of these bigger guards, Chad Baker-Mazara at 6'7", could some of these guards affect the shooting of Florida's guards in the backcourt with these threes? The game may be different if they can do that this time. But like I said, I think that Florida has the size advantage inside. So that's going to be something to watch. I feel like Florida has to control the boards up front to give them a chance to win this game. And I think if Auburn has a chance to win, they're going to have to defend Florida's guards and not give up as many threes as they did the last time when they played. The X factor in the game. Now, I've been watching all these games, and one of the guys that I've been really impressed with for Florida is a guy named Denzel Aberdeen. And he's a backup guard that comes off the bench, and he's a 6'5" guard, and he's played really, really well in the minutes that he's gotten in this tournament. I would keep an eye out for him, see how many minutes he plays, see how well he does when he comes in. He's got the size to be able to match up with some of these bigger guards for Auburn. So that, to me, will also be a key. So we'll see how this game goes. I think it's going to be a great game. And there should be some scoring in the game, which will make it obviously fun to watch. Now, the second game is Houston against Duke. And that game is at 9 o'clock on CBS. Now, I talked about Houston, and I talked about the fact that they were at a geographical disadvantage last week in the Sweet 16. And now it's an advantage for them being so close to their campus with the games in San Antonio. So that's going to help them. What's not going to help them is who they're playing. They're playing potentially the team that's playing the best right now in the country. And they're also playing the biggest team by height in the country, which is Duke. Duke averages 6'7" per player. They have a very, very tall team. Matter of fact, one of the tallest teams ever in NCAA history. So that's one thing that we'll talk about in a minute that I think is going to be a big factor in this game. Now, scoring-wise, Houston's leading scorer is L.J. Cryer at 15.4 points a game. And Duke's leading scorer is Cooper Flagg at 18.9 points a game. Now, Houston, surprisingly, everybody thinks about Houston as a defensive team, which they are. They're actually first in the country in three-point shooting percentage at 40%. And they've got 3 players that shoot 43% or better from behind the arc. So that's a little deceiving because everybody talks about Houston with their stifling defense, but they can shoot the ball this year. They've got some scoring potential. As far as points per game per team, Houston scores 74 points a game, which is 167th in the country. Duke scores 83.7, which is 9th in the country. Points against, now this is where both of these teams are really good, not just Houston. Houston, as I said, is a great defensive team, first in the country, only allowing 58.3 points a game. But surprisingly, you've got Duke, only allows 62.6 points a game, which is 7th in the country. It's something that people never talk about with Duke. They don't talk about how good their defense is. In this tournament, they shut Alabama down, an Alabama team that scored 100 points the game before that they played. So Duke is very good defensively. A lot of people don't really look at them as a defensive team, but they can play some defense. As far as field goal shooting, Duke shoots at 49.6% from the field, Houston at 45.4%. Free throws, Duke, excellent free throw shooting team. 11th in the country as a team, shoots 79%. Houston at 74.1, which is 109th in the country. And both of these teams are really good controlling the ball. Very, very good as far as their turnover ratios. Houston is 3rd in the country, only turns the ball over 9 times a game. And Duke is 9th in the country, turning it over 9.4 times a game. The matchups, interesting matchups again. Duke being a big team, Houston being somewhat small in the backcourt and even small somewhat in the front court. They've got in the backcourt L.J. Cryer at 6'1", Emmanuel Sharp 6'3", Miles Uzan 6'4" in the backcourt. And then they bring Terrence Arsenault off the bench along with Malik Wilson. Those guys are 6'6" and 6'3" apiece. Now, but you look at Duke, starting point guard is Zion James at 6'6". They've got Tyrese Proctor, their shooting guard, is 6'6". Then they've got Caleb Foster, who comes in as the backup point guard. He's 6'5". So they've got a lot of height, especially in the backcourt for their guards. Up front, Juwan Roberts is their starting center, 6'8". Joseph Tugler, who is the Defensive Player of the Year in the Big Ten, also 6'8", has a big, long wingspan, but is 6'8". They bring in Xavier Francis off the bench, who's a really good player. He's also 6'8", where Duke has Con Knipple is 6'7", is their starting forward. They've got Cooper Flagg is 6'9". People don't realize he's 6'9". And they've got Malawach, who's their center, is 7'2". Then they come off the bench. They've got another guy that's tall, Patrick Ngamba, 6'11", and they've got Mason Gillis, who's got a lot of experience. He was in the Final Four with Purdue last year. He's 6'6". So Duke has this advantage in height where, on the other hand, you could say, well, what is the advantage for Houston? Well, it's their defense. It's their athleticism, and it's their defense. They're the best defensive team in the country. They've also shot the threes really well, Houston. They've averaged 9 threes per game in this tournament. I think that Tugler, who is the Defensive Player of the Year, is going to be on Cooper Flagg. And that matchup is obviously going to be really important. But I think if Duke really controls the boards in this game, Houston's going to have a tough time because, yes, they can score, but I don't think they can score with Duke. And also, Duke's defense is underrated. They're a really good defensive team. I don't know how much they're going to affect the three-point shooting of Houston. That's going to be important. If those guards for Houston don't score, Houston cannot win. That's all there is to it. They do a majority of the scoring for them. If they don't score, Houston's not winning the game. And I mentioned that against Alabama, Duke just smothered their shooters. And Alabama is known for its scoring and its three-point shooting. They were smothered by Duke's guards. So if that happens in this game, it's not going to be much of a game. Houston is an older team. They're a lot more mature team, where Duke is a very young team. And the question's going to be, will that experience and Houston's athleticism beat the talent, the scoring, and the size of Duke in this game? That's really the question. Now, is one other thing regarding the coaching in this game. Kelvin Sampson is the more experienced coach, and that could come into play here in this game too. So the winners of Saturday's games will meet Monday night for the championship. As they say, let the best team win, and enjoy the games, and I'll see you next week.